Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review of The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 11, Knots Untied. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of The Walking Dead, so I'll have to give a spoiler warning for The Walking Dead up to Season 5, Episode 11. If you have not seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. I'll also have to give a mild spoiler warning for the comics, although I have not read the comics myself. I am aware of some of what happened in this storyline, so I have some indication of what may happen next in the show, so if you don't want to be spoiled in any way, shape, or form, this video may not be for you. So, this was a great episode that I enjoyed thoroughly. Personally, I felt last week's episode was received far more praise than it deserved and was ultimately just a boring filler episode. This episode I thought was much better and an improvement on last week, raising the stakes for the whole story and making me excited to watch The Walking Dead again. So we start our episode with what I would say was its weakest link, where we explored the love triangle with Sasha, Abraham, and Rosita, where Sasha is sick of waiting for Abraham to make a move, so she switches guard duty so she will no longer spend time with him. Then we see Abraham in bed with Rosita, where she's all sweet on him, but little does she know he's just thinking about Sasha the whole time. I didn't quite like this because, as I said before, I totally do not buy this romance between Sasha and Abraham. I don't think the two of them have any chemistry together, and the whole thing seems really forced to me, so I kind of don't buy the whole thing. Plus, I just think Abraham's an asshole because he's so lucky to have a chick like Rosita, and all he can think about is another woman. I've got no sympathy for him. Anyway, the plot kicks into motion when they have a little chat with Jesus, who tells them about a community that he's from and suggests trade between them. And this comes just after Maggie and Glenn were discussing how they don't have enough food for the whole community. So a bunch of people get into an RV, go back to Jesus' community, and of course they're kind of on edge and don't know what to expect. But on the way, they see some people from Jesus' community, which we learn is called Hilltop. These people are in trouble, and Rick and crew save them, which gives them more credit when they arrive at Hilltop to be more trustworthy. But once they get there, they meet the leader of Hilltop. He's this asshole who's played by an actor who always plays assholes. He was John Connor's foster father in Terminator 2, and that asshole scientist that tried to kill Mulder in the X-Files classic episode Ice, and plus he's appeared in many, many, many more things, and every time he plays an asshole. So, true to the actor, Gregory is an asshole and tries to come on to Maggie and acts like Alexandra has nothing worth trading. So this makes me wonder why Jesus brought them there in the first place, because Jesus seemed to think trading was a great idea, but Gregory didn't seem interested in it at all. But we do learn more about this when we learn more about Negan and his relationship to Hilltop. So we learn that Negan's group, known as the Saviors, have a deal with Hilltop where as long as Hilltop gives them half of their supplies, they promise not to kill them. But we see a couple of scouts return to Hilltop from visiting with the Saviors, and they report that the Saviors killed a couple of them and they are holding one of them hostage because now they want more than 50% of their supplies. And the guy in question tries to kill Gregory, which he was ordered to do by Negan as part of the deal. But Rick and his group stop the killing and save Gregory's life. So here's why I think Jesus was so eager to trade with Alexandria, because the one thing Alexandria has that Hilltop doesn't was a fully stocked armory with lots of guns and ammunition. The people of Hilltop were only armed with spears and throwing weapons. Now Gregory tried to play it off as, they had no need of those weapons because they've never been attacked before, but it's obvious Jesus doesn't agree. Part of this might have to been a negotiation tactic by Gregory, but part of it could have been he doesn't think of the saviors as a problem, but Jesus does. They're obviously a bit too afraid to take them on because every time they did in the past, it ended very badly for them. But the situation changed a bit after Negan tried to have him assassinated, and they started demanding more of their stuff. So when Maggie goes to negotiate with Gregory again, he still tries to act like a ponce, but Maggie knows that they have the upper hand because she rightfully points out that Negan's asking for more, so he's going to keep asking for more until Hilltop has nothing left to give. Not to mention, he just tried to have him assassinated. So the deal she proposes is that they'll kill Negan for him and get rid of the savior problem in exchange for 50% of their supplies. So here's what I'm wondering though. Because Jesus told them that Hilltop traded with a bunch of different communities, so I'm wondering if that's really the case. Because surely Jesus wasn't referring to the saviors, because that's not really trade. That's extortion. So I wonder if there's more communities out there that Hilltop trades with and that the saviors terrorize. But overall, the main opportunity I think this opens up for the show and potentially could make it very interesting is if they build a situation kind of like Game of Thrones where there's a bunch of different warring locations or been with different political situations and alliances. Personally, to me, that would make this show so much more interesting. In fact, this is kind of what I was hoping The Walking Dead would be from the beginning, because a friend of mine who described the show to me before I watched it, he seemed to describe it in a way that kind of seemed like it was like that kind of situation, but instead the first 5 seasons were just one group of survivors wandering aimlessly throughout the zombie apocalypse and, settling at different places from time to time and encountering other humans that tried to kill them. And that's why I was slightly disappointed with the show, because that premise wasn't all that interesting to me. So, in other words, I was getting really tired of the show doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's why I was so happy that the people of Alexandria didn't turn out to be a bunch of murdering cannibals or something, because that's what would typically happen, because it happened like 6 times already. And I'm really excited about this prospect that this episode brings up, that this would be like a whole new political situation for the show, and that's just really exciting. That's something that I've wanted to see from the beginning. Of course, another issue I have with the show right now is that it has far too many characters, so I do think they need to start calling these characters back, and by that I don't mean background red shirts we know nothing about. I mean a lot of these supporting characters, like Abraham, for example, who I care nothing about. So that leads me to the part where I delve slightly into comic book spoilers. Even though I have not read the comic books, I know that Negan is going to be a long-term badass villain who, in the comics at least, his group, the Saviors, has killed 2 main characters that I know of. Could be more. But the comics are so different to the show. There's so many characters who don't exist in the show, or are dead, or still alive, so you never know which way the show's going to take it. However, the fact I know that Negan's going to be this badass villain gave the end of this episode a really dark sense of foreboding, because Rick and the others are acting like they're just going to go in, kick Negan's ass, and be out, and everything will be all good. But we know that will not be the case, and Rick's group are going to walk into some real pain here, and it will probably cost them some major character deaths, because we know this Negan storyline is going to be prolonged, and it's not just going to be a simple in and out that Rick thinks it will be. And as I said, I'm hoping for a drawn-out political situation with a bunch of different communities, so personally, I hope that's the direction that they go in. So the real question is, who is going to die and how soon? I gave some speculation about this earlier, but based on this episode, I feel very strongly it's going to be out of Glenn, Maggie, Abraham, Sasha, and Rosita, because they seem to be emphasizing those romances in this episode, and it seemed to me that was for the express purpose of bringing the pain. I know last week I mentioned Rick and Michonne, thinking their relationship was a sign Michonne would die, but I kind of pulled away from that a bit. I'm kind of thinking now Rick and Michonne could weather what is to come together, whereas Abraham's love triangle, I just got this strong feeling that was being explored so one of more of them could die. And my big vote would be for Abraham, as I think the whole episode was emphasizing him a bit too much, and I just think this will end with his death. As for Maggie and Glenn, that moment where they were looking at the ultrasound and being all lovey-dovey, in fact they had several cutesy moments like that in this episode, just reminded me so much of that scene from Game of Thrones where Rob and Talisa were being all lovey-dovey with each other a few episodes before the Red Wedding. And The Walking Dead is very similar to Game of Thrones in that regard, where you know, when characters seem to be all happy and content, that means at least one of them is going to die. It's going to happen. So my biggest guess are Abraham will die in the next 2 episodes and Glenn will die in the season finale, but those are just my guesses. I could be wrong. I do want to bring up, as someone who hasn't read the comic books and just going off of the show, which is what I think everyone should do because the show is its own thing and should stand on its own, I was not happy or excited about Negan or the Saviors previous to this episode. I stand by my criticism that their introduction or tease in the first half of Season 6 was not done very well. To me, they just came off as a rehash of the claimed guys from Season 4, and I had I not been told by people who had read the comics that Negan was going to be this awesome villain, I would have thought these guys looked boring and uninteresting. And as I said, whether you read the comics or not, the show needs to be judged on its own merits, and on those merits, these Savior guys looked pretty boring, and I wasn't the least bit excited for them. That is, until this episode. This episode finally did a good job of properly building them up and making them come off as an interesting group of people. I mean, that moment where some of Gregory's own men tried to kill him because Negan told them to, just shows you how much of a dangerous guy he is. So now I am truly excited for Negan, and I can't wait to see where they take the storyline from here. So my rating for Knots Untied out of 10 is an 8, extremely good. Stupid Abraham love triangle storyline notwithstanding, this was a really exciting episode with lots of twists and turns and great moments such as when Rick stabbed a guy in the throat who bled all over him and he just got up and was like, what? Which was so awesome. To the great sense of foreboding I got knowing Rick's group is walking into some pain, and to the prospect of The Walking Dead opening up a whole new realm of political intrigue rather than simply being about a group of people wandering around from place to place, which frankly that storyline has gotten very thin a really long time ago. So it makes me really excited to see what will happen in The Walking Dead next, and overall I really enjoyed this episode. So that's it for my review of Knots Untied. Be sure to check back here every week as I review episodes of The Walking Dead. Also be sure to check out my reviews on other shows such as Better Call Saul and Vikings. And I try to do at least one Game of Thrones video a week, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.